Like, I was fascinated by Clem Burke from Blondie. I loved that band when they first came out. Parallel Lines is still one of my favorite albums of all time. And there was a show called Solid Gold, and the very first it started in 1980 as a show, but they had a special in 1979 where they counted down, I think it was the 100 or 50 top songs of the year. And it came down to the end, and everyone's like, oh, is it going to be Rod Stewart or Blondie, you know? So it was like, Blondie, I think, was second with Heart of Glass, and Rod Stewart was first with Do You Think I'm Sexy? And so, you know, that was the whole introduction of video. You can actually watch the band playing the music. Wow, that's just incredible on TV. And Don Kirshner's rock concert came out, and we had a local show on the PBS station called The Beat, hosted by a guy named Dr. Doug Podell. From then it was called 98.7 Wheels, WLLZ, but now he's the program director at RIF, WRIF, which is, I think it's going on 40 years old now. Wheels is I don't even know if Wheels exists anymore, but they suddenly went to jazz one day. It was like, whoa, what the hell did you do that for? But anyway, so, you know, the FM radio came out, and then we were off to the races. So, now we're in the late 70s when, as I said, we started to buy our own records and get our own records. And the whole concept of the way we listened to music was, it was an album, and you listened to the whole album. And subsequently, or consequently, the whole album needed to be fairly good. You can't just put 2 songs on there and 9 filler songs. So, while, you know, let's take Pat Benatar, for instance. She came on the scene with I Need a Lover, which was a cover song, and then In the Heat of the Night, which was the eponymous, that's the title song of her first album. But I listened to the whole album, and I love, you know, My Clone Sleeps Alone. I can't even remember the titles now. But Rated X, I think, is another one on the first album. And then, you know, the second one comes out, and You Better Run and Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Album hits, radio hits. But, you know, I liked Wuthering Heights, and, you know, and God, she could actually sing for once, you know, like, not only is it decent pop music, the singer can actually sing. She's classically trained. And then there's this goofy-looking guy on the cover, and his name is Myron Grombacher. And I think, oh, he plays the drums. And, you know, Hell is for Children comes out, and I'm like, that's a cool drum beat. You know, there's all the syncopation and some really fancy snare work, and there's some really subtle ride cymbal patterns. And that's really when the bug got me. And I thought, yeah, one day I'm going to get a drum set. And I begged my parents, but, you know, it was like trying to get a pet. Oh, yeah, one day you're going to stop doing that and I'll be out $1,000. He didn't talk like that, but, you know, we want a dog, Dad? No, because we're going to end up taking care of him and feeding him, and we don't want a dog. So, you know, we begged for pets, and I begged for a drum set, but I never got one. And that's why I didn't start till I was 22 years old. But from the time I was 13 or 14 until I was 22, I did a whole lot of research just by way of listening and immersing myself in the music, because I loved the drums, just like rock and roll band, right? Just a little thing like, oh yeah, cool, or 38 Special, Caught Up in, I think it's Caught Up in You or something. At one point it just goes, I thought, yeah, I want to do that. Or then, you know, Tom Petty. And there were all these little tiny fills. So this is really when I started listening to drummers specifically. And I guess the first, even though I don't really like him as a drummer, the first drummer that I took notice of in a rocky way was Peter Criss, because I got the album Destroyer, and you know, just endless. Beth, Detroit Rock City, Shout Out Loud, Flaming Youth, King of the Nighttime World, Do You Love Me? And, you know, just stuff like or you know, just really driving beats and stuff that I liked. And then, you know, the Sultans of Swing was kind of a good mixture of classical swing and a kind of jazzy feel with a rock song, Mark Knopfler playing away. But then it was kind of like sort of country or southern rockabilly or some weird mixture for an English guy especially. But right after he says the words, then the man he steps right up to the microphone and says at last, just as time bell rings, and then he goes, he does a paradiddle thing between the ride cymbal and the snare with really cool dynamics, and it was just like, whoa, whoa, what was that? And I just like, okay, one day I got to find out all this stuff. I've got to learn how to play all this stuff. And you know, Thin Lizzy, Boys Are Back in Town. Just a lovely touch on the drums. And then the classical fill. And he does it again a couple seconds later. And then one of my huge influences, even to this day, and it's a very big pity that he died at such a young age, but the Knack came on the scene, and I don't know why they only had 2 albums. I guess disco died and new wave took over and whatever. Who knows? But Bruce Gary was really one of my incredible influences, along with David Robinson from the Cars, who I'll talk about in a minute. Just so energetic, and the touch and just the stuff he played were just great. And I remember one of the things that got me out of there was, you know, everyone knows. Right? Am I showing him? But, you know, I was more into like Lucinda, right? Lucinda's gonna make you cry. And then there's this drum beat that goes like this. Something like that. I haven't listened to it in years, but it was just like, wow, he's going around the house and he's doing an in between, you know, a flam. What the hell is a flam? I didn't even know it was a flam, but it sounded cool. And it's, you know, stuff between his foot and his hands. And then there's this wicked ghost note and cowbell in a song called "The Monkey and Me," or "Who's on My Back," or something like that. And that album was just so influential as far as me wanting, oh, I gotta play the drums. I've gotta play the drums. So then we got the Cars, Styx, with these flamboyant, over-the-top drummers. And mind you, I hadn't even heard of Rush, okay, by this time.